audition to begin, as his biggest dream is to become a successful actor and make his father very proud. As soon as she enters the room to interview the candidate, the agency coordinator likes his profile and explains the lead role in her superhero movie, titled Badman. The problem is that the conversation is interrupted by an embarrassing commercial that Cedric had filmed some time ago. Because of the disturbing way the commercial was produced, the woman decides to reverse her decision, and the man returns home, where he is greeted by his sister Eleanor, along with his friends Adam and Sabe. Upon hearing what happened, the group teases Cedric about the situation and asks him to go pick up some pizzas they ordered at the trailer where he works. However, on the way, he comes across a woman robbing an elderly man, who screams for help. However, Cedric does nothing to stop the crime, and this attitude infuriates the old man, causing him to start attacking Cedric. Desperate, the man tries to climb the wall to escape the blows, but the elderly man uses his crutch to try to pull him back, causing him to lose his pants. Because of this, Cedric ends up traumatizing the children on the other side of the wall and is taken to the police station, where he talks to his father, who reads him the list of charges against him. Disappointed by the whole situation, Michael explains that he understands his son's dream of becoming an actor, but he asks the man to try to get a real job, just like his sister, who has already served in the army. After the conversation, Cedric leaves, promising that he'll make his father very proud of him someday. Meanwhile, Adam talks to his fiancée, who is none other than Seb's mother, and he explains that to have more privacy in that house, he'll try to get her son to move in with his girlfriend. However, Seb thwarts the madman's plans and plays a prank on him, lying about having put something disgusting in his juice and making the man throw it all up. Minutes later, Cedric arrives home, and while watching Seb argue with his stepfather, his cell phone starts ringing, revealing it to be a call from the production company. Excited, Cedric answers the call and celebrates upon discovering he's been cast in the role. The problem is that the producer ended up mixing up the contact numbers and hangs up on him. Shortly after, the woman contacts Ludovic, the actual actor who had been selected, but during his celebration of landing the role, the man ends up getting into an accident and tragically loses his life. As a result, the producer is forced to call Cedric again, who is thrilled to learn that this time, he has actually been cast in the role. After that, the man begins to prepare for his new start as an actor and starts an intense workout routine at the gym, managing to make his body stronger and more defined. During preparations for the first day of filming for Badman, Cedric calls his sister and gives her a behind-the-scenes look at the production, saying he can hardly believe everything he's experiencing on this journey. At that moment, the director asks the lead actor to come talk to Alan Bellman, a famous actor who will play the villain in the film. Excited, Cedric approaches the movie star, but the man turns out to be extremely arrogant, and to keep him from getting even more stressed, the director starts filming. During a negotiation scene between criminals, the great Badman appears in his modified vehicle and sets out to confront the gangsters, defeating each one in spectacular fashion. At the end of the fight, a criminal appears to surprise the hero with his gun, and while pretending to surrender, he fires the missile from his vehicle. The problem is that the dummy used to stand in for the criminal in the scene's explosion fails to blow up, and the production team gathers with one of their staff members to figure out what went wrong. After that, the day of filming wraps up, and before leaving, Cedric goes to remove his makeup in the dressing room. At that moment, he receives a message from his sister, who reveals that their father nearly perished and is hospitalized. Desperate, Cedric calls his sister, but she doesn't answer the phone. Realizing he has no other choice but to leave, he decides to use Badman's car to drive to the hospital. The problem is that while Cedric is driving, a production staff member keeps trying to figure out the remote for the fake explosion and accidentally triggers the device, causing the vehicle's trunk to explode. As a result, the actor suffers a serious accident and wakes up a few minutes later, calling the authorities for help. However, when he hears the operator asking his name, Cedric realizes he can't remember it and doesn't even know what he was doing in that car. Furthermore, the man finds a bag of money next to him, along with the prop gun he used during filming. However, since he doesn't remember any of this, he begins to believe he stole that money from somewhere. To make matters worse, Cedric realizes he has crashed into a bench and decides to flee, only to be spotted by the two police officers, who begin chasing him. Quickly, the man hides at the top of a tree, but he ends up being bothered by some bees, forcing him to hold on tighter so as not to lose his balance. Thanks to this, the beehive ends up falling on the head of one of the officers, who jumps into the river to save himself, and realizing that the men have dropped one of their tasers, Cedric decides to grab it. Before he is shot, the man fires the taser, and upon being struck, the officer falls into the water, causing the entire lake to be electrocuted. To avoid even more trouble, Cedric flees far away, and the next day, Eleanor talks to her father about what happened the night before. It is then revealed that Michael was the target of an attack by Chizo, a powerful criminal who leads the city's largest criminal organizations. Worried about her father's safety, Eleanor asks him to retire from his position with the authorities, but he insists he won't let the criminal win this fight. At that moment, she receives a call from the producer of Badman's movie, and upon hearing that her brother is missing, she decides to turn on the TV, where she sees the news about the accident involving Badman's car. Upon hearing the report, Michael declares that he will make the person responsible for that crime pay dearly, and realizing that her brother may be in danger, Eleanor meets up with the rest of the group so they can search for him. After a few minutes, Sabe suggests tracking Cedric's phone, and liking the idea, Eleanor heads to the device's location. As soon as they arrive at the location, the group comes across an ordinary family, and determined to find her brother one way or another, Eleanor breaks into the house, taking the residents hostage to force them to talk. Frightened, one of them decides to tell everything that happened, and reveals that after finding Cedric on the road, they took him to their house. When they realized that the man couldn't remember anything else about his life and was carrying a bag with large amounts of cash, the family decided to lie, claiming they were his relatives, so they could take advantage of the money. Upon hearing this, Eleanor flies into a rage, but the family insists they did nothing to harm Cedric. In addition, one of the daughters says she peeked at the man through the keyhole of her bedroom door, and while doing so, she came across Cedric going through her belongings. While trying to understand more about himself, the man found the equipment he had used during the film's production, and because of this, he began to believe that his co-worker was his real wife. Soon after, Cedric found a high-tech watch created by the production team, and upon watching the videos explaining how his suit works, along with the news that his wife and son had been captured, he fell into despair. From that point on, Cedric began to believe he was a real, hidden superhero, and realizing he didn't have much time to save his supposed wife, he decided to take action. Upon reading the letter her brother left before leaving home, Eleanor becomes extremely worried, as she knows that from now on, he believes he really is a superhero. In the middle of the road, Cedric waits for a ride and is found by Lori, who decides to take him to the city. Meanwhile, the production crew tries to find a way to continue filming, but the absence of the lead actor makes this task practically impossible. Far from there, Eleanor continues searching for her brother when she comes across Lori and Cedric driving peacefully down the same road as them. Desperate, the woman tries to get her brother's attention by signaling for them to stop the car, but Cedric doesn't understand and just waves back. At that moment, Sabe, who is suffering from hallucinations caused by his medication, sees his mother standing in the middle of the road and forces his friend to swerve. The problem is that this ends up causing a serious accident, and Cedric becomes even more confused by everything that just happened. Meanwhile, Lori was talking on her phone, and since she didn't notice the situation, she continues driving normally, saying they'll have to make a stop soon. As soon as she arrives at the location, Lori ends up being held hostage by a pair of criminals who have just robbed the local bank, and in desperation, she screams for help. Realizing this is his chance to test his powers as a superhero, Cedric takes off his coat and goes to save the woman. Quickly, the man tries to disarm the criminal, but ends up taking a blow that sends him tumbling backward. Wanting to take him out, the criminal grabs one of the guns that fell to the ground, but it's a blank-firing pistol, and seizing his chance, Cedric throws himself toward the real gun. Thanks to this, a hand-to-hand fight begins, and Lori desperately tries to escape the vehicle while accidentally taking several hits. Shortly after, the criminal fires his gun in the midst of the confrontation, and although the bullet causes Lori's vehicle to explode, they continue fighting. Finally, Cedric is pinned down by the criminal, who tries to finish him off, but at that moment, a bee flies into the man's mouth, causing him to choke. Taking advantage of the distraction, Cedric uses his sleep spray, and at the same time, the criminal passes out from being unable to breathe in the smoke. However, the superhero doesn't realize this and believes that his sleep spray actually works. At the end of the confrontation, Cedric grabs the bag of money and flees the scene, along with Lori, leaving the criminals furious. At that moment, it is revealed that one of the criminals was none other than Chizo, who watches the pair flee with his stolen money. As they flee down the road, Cedric reveals his identity as Badman and explains that he's carrying that bag of money to rescue his wife and son from his arch-enemy, the bloodthirsty clown. Although she doesn't quite understand what's going on, Lori believes the man, and just then, they are surprised by gunfire from Chizo, who appears with his partner in crime. Quickly, Cedric and his friend run to hide from the thugs, and he asks the woman to get inside one of the plastic balls so she can blend in with the other children. Soon after, Badman runs behind the stage and accidentally ends up destroying part of the structure, causing the wall to collapse on top of the children who were performing their play. Despite the chaos he's causing, the man keeps running, and Laurie decides to help him by hitting the criminals over the head with a ball. The problem is that this forces the woman to flee, and during the chase, she bumps into several people and is hit by a vehicle. The good news is that the plastic ball manages to protect her from the impact, and realizing that his friend is already being rescued by some police officers, Cedric decides to grab a car to get out of there. At dusk, Badman arrives at Volume Crescent's castle, which was the location designated by his enemy for them to meet. Otherwise, his family would be eliminated. The problem is that during the raid on the mansion, Cedric fumbles his movements, and in addition to blowing up the power box, he bumps into a cage holding a valuable eagle, which flies away from there. Despite this, the man makes his way inside and is surprised by a birthday party that was prepared for Alan without even him knowing. Trying to prevent his supposed disguise from being blown, Badman acts as if he's also part of the party and applauds the birthday young man. At that moment, Cedric's co-star appears and kisses Alan, revealing herself to be his wife. Since he remembers nothing about his real life, Badman concludes that his archenemy has stolen the love of his life and is devastated by the situation. As he walks through the house, Cedric hears a young man calling for his father, and believing that this is his son, he rushes to rescue him, saying he'll take him away from there. Realizing that the masked man is not his father, the young man orders him to leave, but Badman simply concludes that his enemy lied about being the child's father and continues with his plan. The man then prepares to leave with the boy. And realizing that something is wrong, Alan and his wife try to enter the room, but the door has been locked by the intruder. Before they could stop him, Cedric jumps out the window with the boy, landing in a garden fountain. Furious, Alan tries to do the same, but the cape of his costume gets tangled in the window bars, causing him to run out of air. At the same time, Cedric emerges from the water with the young man, accidentally pressing a button, and in desperation, the actor's wife tries to save him by cutting his cape. The problem is that the device Badman activated was the fountain's shut-off valve, and because of that, Alan lands face first on the concrete. Within minutes, authorities and news channels report to the city on the criminal's whereabouts, who now has a boy as his prisoner. Determined to defeat that madman, Michael heads toward the criminal's location, while at the same time, Chizo also decides to go there so he can take revenge on his enemy. While trying to enter an abandoned cabin in the middle of the forest, Cedric asks the young man to step back, but at that moment, the pair is spotted by the eagle, which carries the boy away. Although he doesn't know where the young man went, Badman sees the police officers approaching and decides to hide. While his partner searches one side of the cabin, Michael heads to the other and runs into Cedric, who accidentally turns on the light in the room. With no other choice, Badman lunges at the officer, and after disarming him, he tries to eliminate him with the knife. The problem is that the weapon was one of the props created by the production team, so its retractable blade prevents the user from injuring anyone. Although he doesn't understand why the criminal has a knife that doesn't work, Michael keeps fighting and lands a punch to the madman's face. With his opponent unconscious, the officer decides to remove his mask and goes into shock when he finds himself face to face with none other than his son. Although he doesn't understand why his son did that, Michael stays composed and throws the man's body out the window so he can lie to his colleagues and say he didn't find anyone. The problem is that as soon as he looks out the window again, the officer notices that his son has already disappeared and is devastated by what he has just discovered. In the middle of the forest, Badman wanders aimlessly through the darkness when he is found by his sister, who takes him far away from there, preventing Chizo from getting his revenge. To help her brother remember his real life, Eleanor explains the accident and his life as an actor, and hands him her cell phone, which contains countless photos and messages from his friends and family. With all this information gathered, Cedric realizes he has just fought his father, and to resolve the situation, they decide to call Michael. Eleanor quickly explains the whole situation to her father, but the man can hardly believe what he's hearing. At that moment, Chizo appears, surprising the group, and orders Cedric to return the bag of money he stole from his partner. However, Badman isn't intimidated, and disarms the man with his hook, causing the gun to be flung into the pipe and fall to the other side of the warehouse, right on top of a pile of fake weapons from the production company, which is filming right next to them. Despite this, Chizo remains determined to get his revenge, so Eleanor and Cedric team up with their friends to defeat him. However, before they can even reach the villain, the group members end up hitting each other, causing them to fall over. At the same time, Sabe lands in a box full of fireworks and accidentally sets them off, causing a massive explosion at a nearby cathedral. Despite the accidents, Cedric stays focused and goes after the criminal, starting a fierce fight on the film set, where the adversaries destroy all the structures. At that moment, Michael arrives at the scene with his police convoy and enters the premises to capture the suspects. However, upon finding Badman tied to a pillar and removing his mask, the squad is confronted by none other than Chizo. Next to the tied-up criminal, the police find a letter left for them, signed by a man calling himself Mr. Rooster. Upon hearing this, Michael realizes this is his son's doing and is moved to learn that Cedric is a true superhero. A few meters away, Cedric and his group watch the police operation, and the next day, he decides to visit Lori, since now that he's discovered he was never married, he can try to build a life with her. However, as soon as he arrives at the house, Cedric comes across a photo of himself with a woman, and remembers that Lori is none other than his ex-girlfriend. At that moment, the journalist appears and explains that after hearing about the accident her ex-boyfriend had suffered, she decided to help him deal with everything, since she still had feelings for him even after they broke up. Furthermore, Lori says it was hard to deal with the fact that he had forgotten her, but she felt comforted when she realized he was able to fall in love with her just as he had before. Relieved that it was all over, the couple kisses, and days later, a breaking news story appears on the news, reporting that a famous actor was shot by a real gun that had been left among the prop guns on a film set. In addition, reporters tell the story of Alan's missing son, who was found hanging from a building after being released by an eagle. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe.